my name is Sarah Beth, and this is What I Wish I Knew About Christian Sexuality, Episode 3, Sex Ed 101. So you may want to skip this video because talking about our sexual organs is awkward and weird, but like, why? If we talk about our organs objectively, it should be just like talking about how our lungs help us breathe or how our stomach helps us digest. What's ironic is that we need to understand how our reproductive systems work in order to keep this human population thing going. So the choice is obviously up to you. I can't force you to watch this, but I highly suggest that you do, and here's another reason why. Because I also feel like it's a human right to know about your body and what goes on in it. In this episode, I plan not only to cover what each part of that reproductive system for each gender is, but also how they work together to become the full system. Plus, it can also be crucial when you're talking to your doctor about something that might not be feeling right, or to your partner in the same light.
And I tripped or fell over and hit my head, or brain helmet.
Especially when we talk about consent in the following video. Also, I feel like some of you might not have gotten as thorough of an education as you needed, or maybe your parents just have not talked to you about any of this at all. My understanding comes from if you haven't had an example of how to give the talk, then you know that cycle keeps going. So let's end the cycle now and let's just talk about it. So we're gonna separate this by gender and start with the men's because the ladies gets super complicated. And I'm gonna try to make this as funky fresh as I can. So let's get into it. Okay, so here we have the penis, but you will come to find that it is much more than that. For starters, these organs produce, maintain, and transport sperm, which are male reproductive cells, and semen, which is the protective fluid around sperm. They discharge the sperm to fertilize an egg during sex, as well as produce male sex hormones. The male reproductive system is very dependent on hormones like the follicle stimulating hormone, or FSH, and the luteinizing hormone, or LH, and testosterone. So let's get into these structures. So the external part of the male system is called the penis, and it's divided into three parts: the root, body, or the shaft, and glands. The shaft has three chambers where there is a sponge-like erectile tissue that contains spaces that blood can fill when you are sexually aroused, also known as an erection. The opening of the urethra, which allows you to go pee and ejaculate or dispense sperm, and that's at the tip of the glans. The glans is also covered in nerve endings and is very sensitive to stimulation. When the penis is erect, urine flow is blocked from the urethra so that only semen can exit. Next, we have the testicles, or the testes, which produce testosterone and sperm. And then internally/externally, we have the epididymis, which is a long coiled tube that rests on the back of each testicle that stores and carries sperm. It also matures sperm, and during sexual arousal, contractions move the sperm into the vas deferens. Now for internal structures. I know you've been so excited to get to these internal structures. The vas deferens is a long tube that travels from the epididymis to just behind the bladder, and it moves sperm to the urethra in preparation for ejaculation. Then it goes into the ejaculatory ducts, which empty into the urethra. Other structures not involved directly in this process are the seminal vesicles, which are pouches that attach the vas deferens near the base of the bladder and make fructose that provides energy for sperm to move. Most of your semen is actually made of this. And similarly, the bulbothral glands produce lubrication fluid for sex. Then there's the prostate gland, which contributes additional fluid to ejaculation, which helps nourish sperm. So like I said, the male system is pretty straightforward. It's also almost entirely external. There is a lot of really important parts that are internal, but that external part makes it a lot easier to take care of it because you'll see what's going on right in front of you. Whereas with the female system, it gets, like I said, complicated. So the way to take care of the male reproductive system is pretty straightforward. First, you should regularly screen for STDs and STIs, but the other thing that deals with an internal structure is prostate exams. Prostate exams screen for prostate cancer, and you should start having them around ages 45 to 55, depending on genes and stuff like that. And prostate cancer is completely dependent on a bunch of different things like obesity, race, age, smoking habits, hormone levels, genetics, and basically it includes a blood test and then a physical examination where a doctor puts his gloved finger up your butt and feels your prostate for any lumps or bumps.
I'm sorry.
All right, now onto the females. The female reproductive system is a bit more complicated as it has the ability for intercourse, menstruation, and pregnancy. So let's start with the external features. The external features are called the vulva and function to protect the internal parts from infection and allow sperm to enter your vagina. The vulva is made up of the labia majora, which enclose and protect other external organs and grows hair during puberty, and the labia minora, which surrounds the opening of the vagina and urethra. The clitoris, which if you know anything about orgasms, you've probably heard of, is at the top where the two labia meet and is a small protrusion similar to the glands of the penis, which is very sensitive to stimulation. Then we have the historically controversial hymen, which is a piece of tissue covering or surrounding the part of the vaginal opening. It was and still is in some cultures checked to make sure that a woman is still a virgin. This is where the phrase popping your cherry comes from, because traditionally if a woman doesn't bleed upon losing her virginity, then she's deemed not a virgin. Although this has been proven false and inconsistent. Lastly, there's the urethra, which is the hole you pee from. Now internally, this is where most of the female reproductive system lives. There is the vagina, which is a muscular canal that joins the cervix to the outside of the body. It's able to stretch and shrink during childbirth, and it's lined with mucous membranes to keep it moist. The cervix is the lowest part of the uterus that allows sperm in and period blood out. The cervix dilates for childbirth and can prevent things from getting lost in your body. By the way, when I read that while I was doing my research, my jaw dropped because I realized that once you have a kid, you just have like a gaping hole in your body for a while until it goes back down. Then there's the uterus, which holds the fetus during pregnancy and is split up into the cervix and the corpus. The corpus is what expands during pregnancy. And then we have the ovaries, which are small glands on either side of the uterus that produce eggs and hormones. The fallopian tubes are narrow tubes that are pathways for the eggs to get from the ovaries to the uterus. Now periods, because
did I stutter?
I meant it when I said the ladies are complicated. Your period should begin from around ages 11 to 16, in which hormonal cycles repeat once a month. Your period is broken up into 3 phases. Day 1 to 13 is the follicular phase, where FSH and LH, remember those? Yeah, ladies have them too, are released from your brain and sent to your ovaries, which start growing 15 to 20 eggs, and increases estrogen production, which stops the production of FSH. One egg then reigns supreme in the ovary and stops the other ones from maturing and is released, all while you're still continuing to produce estrogen. Then we have the ovulatory phase from days 14 to 19-ish, where the rise from estrogen in the egg triggers a surge in LH production, which causes the egg to release. And it's caught by the fallopian tube fingers, or fimbriae. And you'll probably notice discharge, or white cervical mucus, which is meant to nourish sperm on its way to meet the egg for fertilization. It is not uncommon during your ovulatory phase to have a super strong sexual desire because of these hormones that are racing through your body. This is all thanks to LH. Lastly, you have the luteal phase, around day 19-ish, where an empty egg develops in the corpus that secretes estrogen and progesterone, which prepares your fertilized egg to implant. No baby, no problem.
Bo body.
It's dissolved in your uterus, and your uterus sheds a tear. Get it? Tear. And that's when your period starts. Yay, pain. Just remember, you got all the eggs you got, baby. Like 6 million. But only 300,000 remain, so choose wisely. Which leads into menopause. So menopause starts around 12 months after a woman's last period. The years leading up to that, a woman will experience premenopause, which includes changes in her cycle, hot flashes, and other symptoms. Menopause itself usually starts around ages 45 to 55, and it lasts for, wait for it, 7 to 14 years. And you may be thinking, what's a big deal? But listen to these symptoms. Hot flashes, irregular periods, lack of bladder control, poor sleep, dry vaginas, change in libido, mood changes, and weight gain. We love to see it. And then after menopause, you enter postmenopause. Yeah, it's not done yet. And it's really important to focus on eating healthy and staying active. And you might want to consider taking a calcium supplement. Okay, so how do you take care of such a complicated system? Well, you're in luck. There are OBGYNs. OBGYN or obstetrician gynecologists, also come as just as gynecologists, they just don't do birth stuff if they're not an OB, can help you in keeping your reproductive system safe by having regular pap smears, pelvic exams, and women's wellness exams, or all of them combined sometimes. You should probably start getting these done when you're around 21 years old, unless you are sexually active prior to that. Basically, it starts with a physical exam where they screen for any sort of signs of STDs or STIs. if you are sexually active. Otherwise, they will take what I like to call a vagina jack and put it into your vagina and jack you up. And then they'll take a little brush that is tiny but mighty, and it's not flexible, and it scrapes little cells off your cervix, and they test those cells for cancer. So I made that sound really intimidating. In my experience, I communicated to my doctor that I was really nervous, and they brought in a nurse, and when I started crying, the nurse held my hand. You may or may not cry. I just have a history of trauma that I explained to my doctor. And then she was explaining everything that she was doing before she would do it so that I knew what I was going to be feeling. It's uncomfortable, yes, but it's not painful in my experience. So just know that it's important, and you know, your doctor's there for you. They deal with crying women all the time. So if you cry like me, you're in good hands. And then the pelvic exam, they can also feel around on your ovaries, and they try to see if there are any lumps or bumps there, in case if you have any sort of cysts or cancer growths. Okay, so we know how the physical parts work, but something that's always intrigued me is understanding the chemicals involved with sex, because that's still what we're talking about here, right? So here's what happens. You're getting physical. Let's get physical. And your body is getting excited. That's literally what it's called. It's a physiological response to changes happening in your genitalia. When you do things like foreplay, throughout like kissing, touching, stuff like that, you can get excited because your peripheral nervous system sends signals to your brain. The hypothalamus, which is hormone HQ, responds to the arousal, and it signals the body to produce testosterone. And it's actually really hard for men and women to have orgasms if they have low levels of testosterone. And then dopamine, which is the feel-good hormone, is produced in response to stimulation as well. What's interesting is that during arousal, there's an output of nitrogen oxide and noradrenaline, which increases blood flow to the genitalia and initiates erections, lubrication, stuff like that. Then comes the orgasm phase. It starts with the plateau phase. If a person can't feel an orgasm, then resolution occurs. If orgasm is possible, then you'll experience muscle contractions and for men, ejaculation. Women's orgasms tend to last longer, and they can actually experience multiple orgasms prior to resolution, whereas for men, they must resolve before having one again. So now you're probably like, whoa, we just went through a bunch of stuff. Really, why are you bringing this up? So this is kind of when I get into like my whole little like geeky rant about loving science and having faith in science merge more often. What's interesting with all of this is that God like made us this way, and it's like a sign of how intentional everything was. And it starts this like narrative of like the gifts that God gives us. This is also really important to understand because of the chemical effects being in a sexual relationship has on you. First of all, once you have sex, you are bonded to that person. Not for life, but you have an increased bond. There's intimacy that's been achieved. And so if you're just doing casual sex, it can be really hard on your mind if you're not aware of that. It's also important to understand that hormones are just always rushing through you. You can't control what naturally comes up in a cycle, like for a woman, or because of attraction for both genders. And so this idea that lustful thoughts can be controlled, we need to separate this like sexual appetite and lust, because your sexual appetite will naturally trigger these thoughts, but lust is when you obsess over them and you look to them to replace something that, you know, you might be missing. And we'll keep talking about lust and stuff like that in later videos, specifically in the Sexuality 101 video, which will be in episode 8. So I hope this video wasn't too boring. Hopefully editing Sarah Beth spiced it up a little bit. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up. If you like this series, you know, you can always smash that subscribe button. I would really appreciate it. We have many more videos to go, and this video is like a building block for all of the other videos. They kind of come together until they reach the top, which is with the Song of Songs episode. So hopefully all of this is gonna make sense once you get to that episode. It's just establishing foundational knowledge that's important for me so that we are all on the same page moving forward. So I will see you in the next video. Thank you so much. Bye.